You are watching the video version of the Marketing Should Be Fun podcast. We are so glad that you are here. If you prefer to listen to podcasts, you can find the Marketing Should Be Fun show on any of your favorite podcast platforms, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else. But most of all, we're so glad you're here, and I hope that you enjoy today's conversation. Well, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Should Be Fun. My name is Austin Savage. I'm founder of Savage Content Collective. I'm here with Kelsey Zarko, who's the founder of Curate Social. Kelsey, how's it going? I hear it's actually really good weather there today.
It's amazing. We don't have cold weather here. Very happy about it.
Yeah, I was talking to Brad, who's on my team, who also lives in Dallas, and he was saying it's like 60s or 70s there today. So
yeah, it's great. I know. I was like, how do you know what the weather is here? But that makes sense.
I am actually in Dallas right now.
I would be so mad at you if you were here and I didn't know it.
This is not timely at all for the episode that is going out, because this will go out in the future. But did you watch the Cowboys game last night where they got destroyed?
I didn't. I'm sorry. I'm mostly Texan, but I'm not like super dedicated in that area. My bad.
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like that's like, isn't that wrong?
Yeah, probably. They're also just really bad and sad. I mean, poor Dak. We just don't have a lot of players, so it's a hard thing.
Poor Dak and his $20 million.
I mean, so sad. No, I did not watch it. We were at some friends' houses and we were doing other things, and I just, didn't watch it.
Fair. Okay. I just didn't know. I actually don't know if we've ever really talked about what team you root for. Maybe we have before.
I will watch them if they're on, but I don't arrange my schedule around it. Plenty of people do here, so I get the hype.
I actually shouldn't have made fun of your team, because my team also got absolutely obliterated this past week as well. So
yes, Matt is a Bears fan. It's
sad.
It's hard
Every
to be
week
both.
is sad. Yep,
That's true.
Okay, I have a this or that for us today. And I think it's an easy one. And sometimes we just need some easy this or that's. You know what I'm saying? So
Simple,
maybe it's inspired.
basic.
Yes. Just all of the things, Maybe it's inspired by the 60, 70 degree weather in Texas. Maybe it's inspired by the 35 degree weather here in Illinois.
Is it seriously 35 degrees there?
No, at night it's been getting to like 30. It's been getting in the 30s at night, but not in the day.
I'm leaving to come there in a few weeks for Thanksgiving. I'm going to need to start preparing some warm clothing. Thank you.
It hasn't snowed yet. Usually, I feel like a lot of recent years it's been snowing on Halloween a lot, and it didn't do that.
That's true.
So there you have it.
Well, I'm ready for this simple, basic, easy this or that.
No complications at all. So it's getting to that time of year where, of course, you've already put up your Christmas decorations. And in order to fully enjoy Christmas, you, of course, have to have some hot chocolate sometimes. Mm-hmm. And in order to enjoy your hot chocolate the best, are you going with marshmallows or whipped cream?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, are you going to mix it with milk or water? And I was like, this is about to get dicey.
Oh, wait, let's do both. Let's do both. Milk or water and marshmallows or whipped cream. Okay,
I will tell you. Water. I don't know why. I actually think it tastes better with milk, but I grew up doing water. That's what I do. And both. Why are you going to try to make me choose between marshmallows and whipped cream? That is rude.
I actually thought the same thing as I asked it. I was like, wait, I actually do think I do both.
My most basic, I would veer towards marshmallows. So I will say that just feels like I'm 8 years old. I just came in from playing in the snow. All of my gloves and wet things are laying on the whatever. Yeah. And my mom made hot chocolate and there's a pack of marshmallows.
That is, yes. I would definitely say marshmallows are more important than the whipped cream. I do the same thing. We've always just poured like boiling water into the mix. But I think it's because my mom's mix that she would make when I was a kid had like,
Nesquik or something like that with the milk already in it.
Yeah, it had like some sort of what's the dried milk? I don't know. Like it's like
evaporated.
Is it
evaporated milk? I think that's what it's called. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's like technically it has milk in it, but it's not enough to even count as having.
There is some dairy content. I just don't ever use milk because you have to pay more attention on the stove so it doesn't burn. I'm like, water will be fine. I'll get to it when I get to it.
Oh, interesting. Is that what people do? They literally just put milk like onto the stove?
To warm it up, you can. Yeah. I mean, I suppose you could put it in the microwave too, but I usually do it
That's
in
so
a pan.
scary. My goodness.
It's so terrifying to warm up milk on the stove.
Literally anything that I haven't done before is just so scary.
Well, just stick with water. It's okay.
Gotta love it. All right. Well, there's our little hot chocolate, this or that. I'm actually very excited for hot chocolate this year. It's gonna be a good one. I can't have it until we put up our Christmas decorations too, though.
That's fair. Weird that you asked because I literally just had some yesterday at church. So I was like, oh, 'tis the season.
'Tis the season indeed. All right. Well, today we are jumping in to our last episode of our little mini series, walking through the ABCs of content marketing. We already had an episode on A, which is adding value. We just shared our Halloween themed episode on
It really was
very Halloween themed on building trust. And today we are talking about C, which is creating community or creating connection. Both of those things kind of go hand in hand, which we'll kind of talk about in a second. But just a reminder, just like we talked about in the last episode, this, all of these things kind of build on each other. So, when we talk about creating a community, we are taking a lot of those principles from, what we talked about with adding value through content. We're taking a lot of those principles, with what it looks like to build trust through content. All of those things kind of culminate in what it looks like to create community and create connection through content as well. So I feel like a good place to start with this, and I'll throw it over to you, Kelsey, is like, what does it actually mean to build a community, especially through content marketing? Like, what does that mean?
I think this is a good thing to kind of parse out a little bit. It can probably mean a lot of things at the end of the day. I think what we're talking about here is building a place, even if that's, virtually, where people want to be, like to be, recognize, kind of know what's happening, feel like they're part of it. So not necessarily something where they've got to opt into a quote unquote actual membership, but more just like when you are creating content, is it content that people are rallying around or feel like they belong to, or just create inroads for them to interact with? It's a natural, organic community that we're talking about.
Yeah. And I know there's like a lot of, if you are versed in the marketing world, community can also mean like sometimes people sell communities, it's like, or that's like a, key kind of marketing strategy of like getting people to be involved in a community, part of a Facebook group, part of, part of an email community, like something that somebody has to join. And that can be part of what we're talking about. But, really when it comes to this, I think we're, talking about community in a more kind of general sense, and really comes down to, I think like also like community is like connection, like you're saying, is like that feeling of connection to a brand, and, feeling like you are involved, to just like to use that language that you just used as well. And I think it's so important because like those people who feel so as connected as possible to your content really are going to be those people who are the champions of your brand, who are like seeing the things and celebrating the things and, talking about the things and interacting with what you share, all of that.
Yep. When I think about community, and again, that a lot of times I'm thinking through the lens of social media, but I just think about like those people that are like always liking your posts, or they're always commenting, or, like you have those DMs about your stories, like you're having a conversation. It's not a one-way thing where you're just like pushing things to them and they're receiving it. It's like there is some give and take, and there's some dynamic interaction, and that's why people feel connected, is there's some back and forth. So I think of it more like that than just somebody who like might recognize your content. I think that's certainly a piece of it, but they want to interact and be part of it and even share it out then with other people.
Yeah. Kelsey, from your perspective, and you can answer it through the lens of social media too, if you want, but what do you feel like are the biggest barriers or reasons that people struggle to create content that people connect with? Like, what are those things that you see as the difference of like a brand that really is creating those brand champions through their content, and those that kind of struggle to make as much progress in that arena?
Mm-hmm. I think the top two that come to mind for me are getting stuck, not feeling confident in being a human, and like sharing more of that like human personal side, and maybe leaning so far into what you may feel needs to be professional that you lose that space that does invite connection. We all want to connect as humans. And that can be done very tastefully and professionally, but there is a side that needs that human connection portion. So that's the first one that comes to mind. And the second one would be just getting hung up on feeling like you have to look like everyone else, or changing your strategy all the time because you are just kind of looking for that quick bullet. We all do this. I see it. I feel it myself in content I create. But if you are always changing and trying to look like someone else, then you're never being you. And so then people don't have the opportunity to connect with you because you're not showing them who you are. And so I think we forget kind of the magic of being ourselves that we really have to offer people.
Yeah. I know this comes back to that like thing that we just talk about all the time is just like one, just insecurity when it comes to content marketing. It's just like so dangerous. Like when you think of just wanting to be effective, it's like, it is the biggest thing that is going to hold you up from momentum. And we see it like with individuals where it's like, I don't feel confident in myself enough to showcase these parts of my life. But then we also see it with businesses where it's like, I don't want to be the one that's different, or like, I don't want people to think like, oh, that's odd that they shared that type of content, or like, I haven't seen that before. And then we start telling ourselves the story of like, if I'm different, then people, won't respect my brand. Instead of that like story of, if I'm, showcasing and leading with my culture and who I am, then people will feel more connected, which is the true story most of the time. And like, I think that's just so dangerous. So I love that you brought that up as like one of those hangups, because I agree. I feel like I see that a lot too, as that like, that's what's going to keep a content marketing, not strategy, but the style of content marketing distant, from the people that you're trying to reach.
Yeah. I think that's when it can feel like more cold or just disconnected. And maybe you just feel like you're putting content out to put content out. There is a strategy behind being consistent, of course, with our content, but to let that warmth and that human connection side come through is super valuable.
Super valuable. So as has become kind of our little theme of this little mini series, we do have, I think we got 5 main points today.
Big time.
So 5 ways or just reminders about creating community through content. And again, that is our lens. Everything comes back to content marketing. We want to talk about how, we can accomplish this through the content that we're sharing online, and just shifting our approach to some of these things to just better kind of bring people in. And we just kind of talked about this one, but we'll riff on it a little bit more. But I mean, I think that actually we probably talked about this in Add Value. We probably talked about this in Build Trust. Here we are talking about it again in creating community, because it's so important. But the first point is, don't be anyone but yourself. Kelsey, you just riffed on this, but riff on it a little more.
Yeah, I think it's the thing that we feel the most insecure in. And of course, that makes sense because it's the thing that can make such a difference. And so I guess I would just encourage you, for those listening, like, there's not something wrong with you if this is hard for you. I think that all of us struggle with this in one way or another, some of us more than others, but it is scary to, it can be scary to be vulnerable or to show more of your true self. For one thing, it's online. You don't have a person sitting right in front of you. And so that can feel a little bit more intimidating of, you kind of have that glass screen there between you. And like you mentioned, Austin, like sometimes it means looking different than maybe other brands that you feel like you would be similar to or be aligned with. You can try. And I think you'll be encouraged by seeing, like, if you kind of dip your toe in, baby step into something that maybe feels a little bit different for you, but is more true to you. I would just challenge you to see what happens. My guess is you're going to see people really connecting with that. It may not go viral overnight, but I just have a feeling, and we've seen this with, clients that we worked with. I just shared a piece of content for a client that was just like a little bit more funny and unhinged than maybe like a normal post would be for their industry. And I mean, it has the most comments of anything they've ever shared. And so it just shows like people want to connect with who you are.
Is this the speed tour video that you're talking about?
Yes. So great.
Literally, I commented on it and I was like, this is my new favorite video on all of the internet.
Yes. Everybody was saying just how much. Yeah. And it just brought joy and laughter. It wasn't so serious. And so I think that kind of goes along with that of like, you don't always have to be this very buttoned up version of yourself to be professional and create community. You can still, whatever that looks like for you. Be funny or be silly or be vulnerable and deep or whatever it is. It doesn't have to fit into a certain bucket or lens all the time. And those things can be different each day depending on how you need to show up that day.
Yeah, I love that example too, because like the goal of that reel that you did was to showcase a new space, but then also to promote a training or like a course. And it's like on one hand, somebody could have just approached that same thing with just like, let me show you our new space. This is this room, and like explaining it, and not obviously being like robotic, but just very like, this is information. Or like, hey, I just want to invite you to this thing. But instead it's like, well, actually, like this is kind of more in line with our personalities, is to be kind of silly, kind of fun, and to, like enjoy our work. And bringing that in, like it makes it a much more engaging piece of content. And you feel like as a result, not only do you get like the information, but like I felt more connected to that brand even after watching it, because you see their personality, you see that fun side of them. I think like that just in general is really the principle here, is like people don't connect just to what you do. People are going to connect to who you are. Being able to show who you are, again, whether that's as a business or whether that is as an individual, it matters. And that is what's going to make the difference of someone, really connecting with your content, or just feeling distant from your content, or just not feeling engaged with it. Like one of the, I think, most common mistakes that we see is, when a business or an organization will over focus on what they do to avoid talking about, who they are. And so like every piece of content is buy this product, join this event, just like very promotions. The goal of it is like, it comes from a good place, right? Like they want to make progress. They want to engage people. But that method of always kind of pushing something to do and not receiving that value, feeling connected to the brand and seeing like that personality, keeps people from, really feeling confident in taking that step, because they don't feel connected before that ask is coming, which I think is just the significant kind of power of leading with your personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that really plays into our second point too, if you're okay moving on to that one. Not only encouraging you to be yourself, but also it doesn't just have to be you. There's this really great piece of involving your community that makes it feel like a community. You don't just have to talk at people. You can invite them in and even involve them. And I think especially now, I mean, so many different platforms make this easy to do, whether it's a podcast or social media or your email or whatever. There are so many ways to directly invite them to be part of it. I know you have one client who every so often on an episode, she'll like share something that she's heard from a listener on social media. I mean, so many ways you can hop onto Instagram, or many platforms have this option of like doing a Q&A or popping up a question box or putting up a poll. I mean, those are simple, tiny things. You could take this and spread it across a broad spectrum. But the main idea here is ask questions, talk to your people, hear from them, create a conversation, going back to what we said before, of a back and forth, not just a, here I am pushing information at you. It's like, let's talk and be real humans and have this interaction that does then create connection and community.
Yeah. I think it's such an interesting shift, like thinking of involving your community is like, I feel like the basic understanding of like content marketing is like talking at people, of like, I have something to tell you, I want to, and obviously sometimes you have to do that. But I feel like that kind of next step is like, how can I talk with people? Like how can I, really engage the people who are, are following me and who are kind of connected to this brand. And I think that's when some really like interesting doors open up. Even when you're swiping through the Reels tab on like Instagram, it's so common to see like Reels created in response to a comment, or like a question that somebody's asked, and, you go over, you create the Reel and it shows a little comment up there. And it, like, even just that is such a great way to engage with people, and use their question, use their interests or their, even just like perspective as fodder for new content. But we see clients do that on, like you were saying, on any content channel. Like we have people write blogs like in response to questions that they receive, and being able to share maybe some specific context to a question that came in, or maybe it's in relation to a product, or to how something is used, but being able to engage people in like, here's how to solve that problem. Here's like a real person who has faced this. And same thing with podcasts, is like you can very easily like source material and source questions from your audience, and it's a great way to engage them kind of in the work that's taking place.
Mm-hmm. Okay, story time. I just thought about this. I think the root of this is that people want to be seen. They don't just want to have information shoved at them. They want to be part of it. I think about like back in, I think I was in like first grade. I don't think people even do this anymore, but you could like write in to your favorite TV shows and they would like send you back a letter. Or I think you could do this with the White House too. And now I'm an adult now, so I understand it wasn't like really Tweety Bird sending me this letter, but I remember writing into Looney Tunes and getting a letter back with like a picture and like a pencil. And it's like, oh, it's not just this big famous brand out there. Like there's a human there who's interacting with me. And I think that same concept, as simple as it sounds, is true of like, oh, I left a comment on your reel and you're responding to it. Like I feel as though I'm seen and I'm part of this and I'm heard, versus it just being like this place that you just feel really out of touch with or disconnected to. And that literally can be bridged and solved with as simple as replying to a comment, or, like taking a question out of your email and turning it into an article or something. It doesn't require these magical steps. It's literally just talking back to people and involving them in your conversation.
Heck yeah. That is such a sweet story. That's so cute. I'm just imagining little Kelsey like writing this letter.
I think it's so funny that I chose Looney Tunes because I didn't even have a TV growing up. So I'm not sure where I got that, but I remember that was the year.
What? I never knew this about you.
About me? Oh, we're going to have to save that for another episode. We don't have time today.
Wow.
But I would watch it probably at my grandma's. But I remember that was the year I like wore a Tweety Bird shirt to the first day of school with my cool hiking boots. And I wrote to Looney Tunes and they wrote back.
Yes, that is so fun. I love that.
We'll just call it the Looney Tunes concept. Respond to your people.
Respond to your people. The Looney Tunes. I love that. We should do that. We should actually like brand it that way. That's so fun.
TM trademark.
Amazing. Our next point is very similar as well. Just remembering that you have, especially as your brand grows, I will say, user generated content is something that can be really, really valuable. And like in this idea of community, is something that can really deepen someone's connection to your brand when they are like, when something that they created or, something that they showcased is able to be used in your marketing in some ways. So, Kelsey, what comes to mind for you? First off, I guess we should explain what is user generated content. But then like what comes to mind of like just some creative ways that you have even seen brands do that in their content marketing?
Yeah, I think this can become a term that feels very like big and fancy and like influencery. It's not though. Like this could literally even be a testimonial. This is just featuring content that your audience has helped you create. Like you're not sourcing it by yourself. Maybe you have a review that got left on your page and you turn it into a really, like a fun reel of like you with some B-roll and you have the testimonial over the top of it. Something where it's more than just you. And so I think it widens this perspective of there's more here than just one person or one brand. There's interaction, there's community. And so it's almost like social proof of community, I think, in some ways, where you're able to show your community that there already is community happening here. But this could also be like, maybe I have a client who shares like hair care. And so she's had people who have like created videos or like a before and after of themselves using her product. And then we've shared that as part of her strategy. And so again, she didn't have to create those pictures, but it shows that like there's a community of people who are using those products that she's helping educate. And it's further proof of this goes beyond just one person.
I mean, when you have content that's made for you, you want to leverage it as much as possible. So it saves time. And again, like you're saying, that social proof. The first thing that comes to mind is we've a couple of clients who are authors. It's not every day that things are coming in like this, but there are times where, they'll get tagged in somebody who, will just take a picture of them like reading their book or, take a picture. Sometimes like you get lucky and it's like more stylized or, something like that and kind of like visually interesting. But just being able to interact even with that content, even if it's not something that you can take and be like, oh, I'm going to, like this is a full blown post on its own, or this is a full blown like article, or, anything like that. But just being able to interact with that content, like if you have software that you've created or something, and, somebody takes the time to leave a review and, taking the time to interact with that and share it and, talk about the good things that they experienced with your product. And, like with, just since I use the example of authors, like anytime that we see content like that, just as simple as like just celebrating the fact that they are interacting with your product and interacting with that book, like just sharing it to your story, and just like saying that is just a great way that is content for you. You are sharing that content, and it's a great way to kind of showcase that community that is forming around your brand.
I love a practical idea. So if you're listening, here's a couple you can take. This can be super simple. Number one, Instagram stories. If you're on Instagram, makes this very simple for us of like reposting if you get tagged. I mean, that is just like user generated content dropped in your lap. But also I've done this before. Like, let's say you have a client or a customer or somebody, like you can take this as far or as wide as you want to. I have like screenshots of text messages from clients that have been happy with things. And I will just screenshot those and like toss them in my stories and be like, love all of the excitement in my text today or something. And so again, you're just showcasing in a different way the ways that your community is already interacting with you, to be able to invite more people into that.
Heck yeah. I know that's such a great way for you. Like I've seen you do that a few times, and it's such a great way to make it anonymous too. Like, to be able to just like pull those screenshots, but, put multiple together. Then it's focused less on like who's providing that and just more on the fact that like you received it and that there are people, like you said, goes beyond yourself with the work that you're doing. I love it. The fourth one is to create content that feels organic. We've touched on this a little bit in this conversation, but to create content that feels organic and isn't just overly kind of promotional or overly asking for or something. But when we can use content to kind of foster that sense of community and really focus on that sense of connection, we said it really opens up a lot of doors. I don't know, you did story time, and this is not story time, but I literally just this week joined a new newsletter, and it's called Coffee for Here. The person who does it, their name is Morgan. It was one of my favorite newsletters that I have read.
Okay. What's the context?
A long time.
Yeah.
They do a lot of coffee content. Like all of their reels are like so heartwarming. They do like skit reels where, I mean, they've won like barista competitions and stuff like that. Okay. And so, but they'll like do these interaction skits between people who like order something and are like having a tough day, but have like a sweet interaction with a barista, or like all of these sort of different things about just enjoying coffee.
Yeah.
The newsletter is around coffee. This one I think was a little bit different because I've only received one edition of this newsletter so far.
Okay. Already a big fan. Look at you though. You're already a brand champion because you felt like you're part of their community.
But the thing that like I just thought was so fun is it was so simple. They just included like 4 things that are bringing them joy. And what has been like a heavy week, here's 4 things that are bringing me joy. And one of them was like an album that they had been listening to a lot. And I've literally like listened to that album 3 times today because like I've just like been vibing it and I've loved it. And I'm like, this is just such a great way that like by leading with their personality, right? Like these are things that have been valuable for me. And, later on in the newsletter, there were some things that like I could take action on if I wanted to, but even just something as simple as that. And, not excluding that because that isn't important or isn't what's, being talked about, really deepened my connection to this brand, because that was something that I found, really interesting, and that, kind of gave me a window into like even just their music taste. And it's like, oh, that's a super interesting thing.
Yeah. It's a point of connection that you can make with them. Yeah, that's really cool. I think sometimes the content I also see from brands or that we've created for clients where it's more like content that resonates with maybe like your audience's pain points or season of life. That is another great way to do this that maybe can feel, I know that sometimes when people hear like great content that creates community, they almost can get overwhelmed. And I think what we're doing here is giving you some like simple ways to start incorporating this, but you don't have to like bare your deepest, darkest secrets to do this. You can even just think about like something that's resonating with you, sharing that with your audience. You're not asking them to take a step. You're not selling them something. You're creating a moment of connection between you two and just understanding like, oh, there's some of the same things we're dealing with or the same things we're walking through. And it creates this moment of connection that is separate from emotional or, you know, it just feels more organic, like you're saying.
I think that leads us to our last one.
Everyone's going to be so surprised by our last point.
Yeah, seriously. And they'll never guess that you have thoughts on it, Kelsey.
And they'll be like, this is so new and unfamiliar. I've never heard them say this before.
Here's the crazy thing though, is once again, we talked about this in Add Value. We talked about this in Building Trust. And here we are talking about it again in Creating Community, because again, through some of these basic principles, you can do all three of these things. You can add value, you can build trust, you can create community. And our last point here, which arguably could be the most important, but depends on how you're looking at it, is the importance, once again, of staying consistent. With a content marketing strategy, we'll say it till we are blue in the face. Perhaps we already do. But consistency is one of the most important things with content marketing. Take it away.
Take it away. Soapbox out. No, this can be said very simply. We want people to show up for us. We build trust with people who are there, who we can count on. And so consistency gives you so much opportunity to build community with people because they know you will be there. And like I always say, this doesn't mean that you have to be there every day or 6 times a day or always on your whatever platform, but it means that there is a human psychology loop building in their head of, I know they're there. I see their stuff. I interact with them. They interact with me. And that gives us this beautiful roadmap and invitation to, we can create connection over a long period of time. You think about even people who talk about like, oh, you know, this was my online friend. They became my real friend. Like sometimes those stories really do happen. Sometimes they don't, but there is no end to how that relationship or that connection can go when you keep showing up and build that consistency and trust with people.
Obviously, like the first thing that comes to people's minds, you know, when you're talking about consistency is like the frequency of like having to create content a certain amount of times every week. And I know, like, I hope that through this series, not just this episode, but even the 2 prior, I hope that people even just feel the permission to like not overcomplicate content, because I think that so often one of the reasons that staying consistent can feel so daunting is because it's like, I have to create this content like 5 times a week or 3 times a week or whatever, you know, whatever rhythm you decide on, that it can feel just like that's really complicated, or like I don't want to design something that many times, or I don't want to record a video that many times, or like even just that idea of like, I don't want to have to come up with an idea that many times. And I hope that like through so much of this, as like we have talked, you know, over and over again about the importance about like leading with your personality and not having to overproduce or over professionalize every piece of content, that really, I mean, makes staying consistent a lot easier, because, you know, you're more easily able to have just like that content lens of, you know, just starting to think through, hey, I'm on a meeting and somebody asked me a really interesting question. I'm sure other people have that question. I can take 5 minutes out of my day to, you know, pop up my phone and say like, hey, I just got off a meeting and somebody asked me this question. Here was my answer. In a way that like simple, it is, you know, fairly quick, but is something that again helps you keep that consistency without overcomplicating it in the long run as well.
So good. I think maybe you were going here too, but you talked about consistency often being like how often we do something or even how we are doing it. But I think it's also a consistency of messaging, not to say that your message or your brands evolve. I mean, even you and I have both experienced this for sure. You offer different things or you know, talk about different points, but this goes back to that point about being yourself. When you show up consistently as you, I think that's also a piece of it where people know who you are and, you know, what you stand for. And they just feel kind of rooted in what they connect with you on because you have shown up in the same ways about the same topics. Again, not that you can't change and grow, but there is something to, I think about people I follow who like they, talk about like their love for queso or like their this certain drink that they have, or that can go into much deeper things too. But just that consistency of like being who you are, because people have the opportunity to then build that relationship with you and what they know to be true about you.
Yeah, that's such a good like on-ramp into just that idea of like even letting people connect with you with those consistent things as well. Like I love that example of like it just becoming obvious to the people who follow you that like you love queso because you actually like talk about it, and like then you're able to make like those inside jokes about like, I love queso. So like I couldn't help it. And, like the those things of like people understanding, those aspects of who you are because you're consistently talking about them. I think even in that, coming back really and grounding in this idea of community is just such a great way to use consistency to foster that idea of connection as well.
So as we wrap up, we have talked about the beauty and option of giving people the space to connect with you. And I just want to remind you that you are worth connecting with. The message and what you bring to the world is worth sharing with people so they can connect with it. So you can create this community that you can see a lot happen through. And that doesn't always have to just be A plus B equals a sale or whatever it is. There is so much meaning to be found in creating community with the people that you're sharing content with. And all of this plays together with the series we've kind of already went through with adding value and building trust. And so if you haven't listened to those, for sure, go back and give those a listen and put all of these steps into place. And we can't wait to just be cheering you on as you build a community with the people that are around you with what you bring to the world.
I love that. We'll see you right here next time on Marketing Should Be Fun.